I think being vulnerable is so hard in this society. It's not something that is innate to us. And we've been told to kind of shy away from those feelings. And I think the biggest thing, and like I struggle with this too, we talked and I started posting a little more on Instagram. If you continue to not show yourself and really actually be vulnerable, you're going to be just like everyone else. And this internet industry is going to continue to get noisier and noisier. And if you're not showing up and being authentic, and having an expression of yourself and having a strong personal brand, you're not going to connect to anyone. It's kind of like we didn't see like women with kids having a successful business. So we put in our mind, we made up a belief that, oh, you can't have both. Like someone didn't even tell us that. We just made it up because we drew the conclusion based on how society was in the past.
Welcome back to Create with Kate. I have an amazing guest in the virtual studio today. I have Kristen, the owner of Yes Events. She's an event strategist and she is just brilliant. I am learning so much from her. We actually, funny story, filmed a podcast last week and it wasn't recording. And we were like, oh my gosh, we filmed this whole podcast. It was so good. And then realized didn't hit record. So that's the first time that's happened to me. Lesson learned. We double checked today and we are back. So welcome to the virtual studio, Kristen. I'm so happy to have you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. I'm so excited to be here and I'm excited to have a second conversation with you. So I think it was a happy accident that it happened.
It sure was. It was just we were meant to connect again. So here we go. When you say virtual event and when you see those studios where you're standing there and then all the screens are like surrounding you. So that's one way of doing a virtual event, right? But then is there another way of doing it where it's kind of like a Zoom, or is that not considered a virtual event? Like, explain.
Yeah. So I think that's a great question because there's virtual event, like there's challenges, there's all of these different types of events that people are hosting on Zoom. And so when I think of a virtual event, it's really about making it interactive because when I was working for this company and we actually transitioned into virtual because we were in all of our clients were internet marketers. Their goal is to make money with their events. COVID happened and it was literally, what do I do now? Because my business is built from events. And so that gave us the like flexibility to like clients were willing to try because they had no other options. And so we literally sat at a table and was like, looked at every single thing that we did in an in-person event and how can we virtualize it and make it into a virtual event. And so the way that I do virtual events is completely different than like how somebody would do a challenge or like what you see in a live stream. But really it's about making it interactive, like, because a lot of people think, well, virtual events, like people have Zoom fatigue and they're like, you can't network and you can't connect to people. But there's actually a way that you can put people into breakouts and do things like that and have Q&As and have shares where they actually get the same connection. And all you need is a Zoom account and a laptop and some really good lighting, and you can have a virtual event because all you're utilizing is Zoom and the breakout features and spotlighting and unmuting people. So it's super low tech. And then once you actually, after you host your first event, then you can start building in those different studios and you don't have to have those big LED walls behind you. Like those are nice, but it doesn't change conversions. You can literally just have one computer in front of you or a computer and a couple of TVs in front of you and host your very first virtual event.
Okay, that's important, I think, for people to know because, so yeah, really it's the entry is easy. You just need Zoom.
It is. You just need,
just about putting them into the breakout so that they can have the connection piece like you would at a live event. So what do you need as far as just like running that and the operations of it? If you're the one that's the host of the event, then would you need or would you recommend someone supporting you on the back end, helping like with the breakout groups and the different things as far as that goes, or what's your recommendation with all of that?
Yeah, so if you're just starting out as a host, you don't want to wear all of the hats, right? Because really what you want to focus on is you want to focus on delivering content. And so I do recommend that you have someone that they get in to like get on your Zoom account and they are the person sending the breakout. So it's almost like a facilitator. And this
Okay.
person like doesn't even have to work for you. Like you can actually hire what I call event support team members who
Hmm.
are trained and know how to actually hire, and they only charge you like $20 an hour. So it's not a big cost. And it's super important because you want to be able, as the host, to really focus on delivering that content. You want to be able to have breaks, and you don't want to be stressed about the technology when you are delivering content because you have to think a step ahead. And if you're thinking a step ahead while you're teaching, you're not really in the actual energy of what you're teaching. And so I think it's really important to have at least one other person there to help you with the tech. But the tech is super, like, it's literally just Zoom. Like, you can train anyone to work Zoom.
Right. So where would you find like this event support team or
Yeah,
staff person?
Facebook groups. So they have so they're called brand ambassadors. Event support team is like an internal lingo that I use, but you go to brand ambassadors like your city or like Orlando, Dallas, because it's virtual. They don't actually have to live in your city because they can do it
Mhm.
remotely. And so you hire someone for, $20 to $30 an hour, and you train them on how to actually send people into breakouts. And it's super easy. Like if we were on Zoom right now, I could show you exactly how to do it. It takes no time. But yeah, it's just Facebook groups, brand ambassadors.
So that's good to know. So then, okay, so let's assume that we want to host our first virtual event. And what is your recommendation as far as like the launch plan? Like, how long should we be talking about it? How many people should we try to get on the event? And then if we're trying to get, say, I don't know, whatever your recommendation is, 100 people, then how many people do we need to have register and all of that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And like when you have a high ticket offer, the thing is you don't need a lot, right? And especially when
Mhm.
you're first starting out, you don't have a lot of people. Like when you're doing low ticket, you need high volume, and you don't really have that. And that's why a virtual event is great and a high ticket offer is great because you don't need that much. And so when I'm marketing a virtual event, I do usually 6 to 8 weeks. I think if you're brand new, I would start with that 8 weeks runway, but you don't need a long time because people don't have to book travel. They don't have to worry about a hotel room. They don't have to worry about expenses, getting a babysitter, all of those things you don't have to worry about. And the other thing that's so great is we found that whenever you don't, like the attendee doesn't have to spend that much money on getting there, they have more money in their pocket to spend on their high ticket offer. They're not spending thousands of dollars to even get there. And so you actually overcome an objection by having a virtual event. And then the other thing that you asked me was how many people do you need? And so when you're just starting out, like your goal, most people's goal is how do I even hit six figures? You only need 50 people on your event if you have a high ticket offer of the $10,000. That's all you need.
Mhm.
And so 50 like people is not a lot in an in-person event. You're going to have to actually spend 20 to $30,000 on hotel, food and beverage, all of those things that come along with having an in-person event. And then you have to worry about if I don't actually fill it, I owe money to the hotel because I can't get those rooms to be booked. And so there's all this liability, all of this unknown that comes with hosting an event. And that virtual event really takes that unknown, like that stress of can I fill the room? It takes a little, like a layer out of it because you're not going to owe more money.
I mean, yeah, because it's so expensive. I mean, we know from hosting WealthCon every quarter with 1,000 people, and
Mm-hmm.
it is very expensive. So, um, okay, so if we need 50 people, or if that's our goal,
Mm-hmm.
then how many people should I have registered? Because not everyone will attend, right? Or will they? And what's
Mm-hmm.
the price? What's the price for the
Mm-hmm.
virtual? What is that recommendation?
Yeah. So there is a whole strategy that you want to do when you have a virtual event to get people to show up. Because the biggest thing that you have to overcome is this is not a live stream. People are so used to live streams, they're used to webinars, they're used to master classes. And so you really have to do the argument of this is a virtual interactive event where you are going to get a front row seat to me, and I'm going to be able to see you. You're going to be able to see me, interact with me. Where if we were in an actual event room, you're going to be, rows and rows and rows back, and you don't get the same connection. This is an actual interactive event where you're going to network
Yeah.
and you're going to exchange conversations and you're going to actually have an intimate relationship with me as the host. And so really that angle in the marketing is so important. And then the show
Yeah.
up is so, yeah. And then the show up, what we do is we send swag. So,
Okay.
that is, which is
I like,
different. Yeah. Because it's like, how do you get them to remember that they actually have an event that day? And so you can do a swag box that can be like $50 or more. But if you're on a budget, there's something called flat swag that you can do that costs like $12 to like send out, super affordable. And the idea is it gets there the week of the event, and it's literally like a knock knock on the door. Hey, you have an event this week. And it's like, oh, wow, look what they sent me. This is so nice. I didn't even know this was coming. I can't wait to show up at that event. So it helps with your show up rate. And the other thing that we do is we do something called a tech check. And a tech check is a virtual registration where they actually go before the event starts and they check in. And so they get these series of emails. It's like, hey, the event's starting tomorrow. We have a team member waiting to greet you so that we can make sure your tech and everything is ready to go before the event. And that gets people to actually check in before the event starts. And what's so amazing about doing all these strategies, these show up strategies, is a webinar and a masterclass, you're looking at a 20% show up rate. With virtual
mm,
events, you're looking at 80 to 85 when you do these.
that's amazing. Okay, let's
Yeah.
go back to the flat swag. Okay, the knock on the door. You open the door. You get this swag. What? Paint the picture. What does it look like? What am I getting?
Yeah. So one thing that we always send out is emoji sticks. So they're these little sticks with like hearts or light bulbs or things like that. And the reason why is so that they can emote and give you back, like because you're virtual, right? And you need to
Yes.
have a way where you can actually understand where are people tracking. And so it's like, hey, like, are you having a light bulb moment? And people are just throwing up their little emoji sticks at the thing.
Okay.
So love doing those. The other thing we love giving away is a door hanger. And so it's literally like a door hanger that goes on your door that's like, shh, I am at work. I'm making millions of dollars here. And it's just a cute little way to get them to like, oh my gosh. And like, I'm going to put this on my door and my kids aren't going to bother me or my husband or my wife or whoever it is, in your household. And so doing that and then stickers, like, so when I do flat swag, like people love stickers. They love the emoji paddles. They love the door hanger. You can do a little workbook or some worksheets that are super affordable, like 3 cents to print. And that like, it just like reminds them. It's like, oh my God, like this person thought about me, thought about everything. Yeah.
Right. Like I think it would be so cool to have a workbook to like follow along and jot down notes for an event.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't know the cost, for that if you did like a bigger workbook. Um, do you see people doing a lot of that or not as
Yeah.
much?
Well, yeah, they do. They do a lot of workbooks, but the other thing that's so important in the way that I run virtual events is I use a dashboard. So there's a software that I use, and it's literally like a membership portal for the event where it's like your virtual ballroom. And so there's buttons that appear on the dashboard that's like main stage, and they click it and it pops them right into Zoom. And then there's like a help desk button where if they have questions, they can actually click that button and there's a real person to talk to in real time. And then the other thing that's great about this dashboard, when you make the offer, there's a button that appears, two of them, one that takes them straight to the sales page. So if they're one of those emotional buyers, they don't have any questions, they just click on it. And then, and then for those that have questions, there's a virtual sales booth. So think about your in-person room where they rush to the back table. There's actually a virtual rush. And so having a dashboard where all of it lives, and then you can actually have a digital downloadable workbook on there. So it doesn't cost you anything that has
Ooh.
fillable worksheets. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wait, what is
Yeah.
this called? What is this software?
Um, yeah, it's called Obvio, OBB.io.
Okay, this is exciting. I mean, the sound of this is amazing. So, okay, so you send the swag, and that is how many days before do you recommend?
Like 3 days. It's like if your event is on Friday, and your tech check is starting that Thursday or Wednesday, then I would have it arrive like Monday or Tuesday. You don't want it to arrive weeks before the event because they forget about it. And
Sure.
then the other thing that's so important that creates a buzz is a Facebook group. because everyone starts getting their swag and they start posting it in a Facebook group and they get excited and they create this community. And even before the event starts, which is something that's so different than in person, because in person, a lot of us are introverts and it's like you show up and you don't have like that relationship before. But with a virtual event, you can actually start building the relationship as soon as they buy the ticket and give them access into the Facebook group. And it's a way to create community before you even start the event, which increases the stick and the show up rate.
That's so good. Okay. So how much would you say if, let's say the offer, I think, well, you were explaining to me before, you said high ticket is considered what, 10,000 and above?
Yeah, so when I talk about high ticket events, I talk about $10,000 or more. And that's what I've seen really works well. And then even up to, I've worked with, well, Russell Brunson, I mean, he has offers up to $150,000. So there's a strategy to sell all of those different offers. But especially if you're just starting out, I know your biggest concern is, well, I can't charge more. Like, I'm scared to charge that. But there's an
Yeah.
actual framework where, like, I'm like the way that Dean, Jeff, all of these people are designing their high ticket offer. They're not creating more content. They're literally layering in different pieces of access to charge more. And so if you have a framework or you have a course, you can literally charge more by just not creating more content, but by giving more access to you, because that's what people need, is they need somewhere to troubleshoot and ask questions.
Okay. So can I explain what that might look like? Give me an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. So all of these coaching programs, one thing that they always have. So I always say that first, you want to have content in a high ticket offer. Content is just your framework. So a course, or if you don't even have a course, you should have some type of framework that gets that person to the result. The other thing you
Okay.
want to have is what I call access. And access is access to you, or if you have coaches, if you're more experienced, you may have coaches instead of actually being you. But it's like having Q&A sessions or having a Voxer or WhatsApp thread where people can ask you questions. One of my favorite is a laser coaching session where people can actually apply to get their questions answered. And then everybody learns from it because, like in this industry, people think they're unique snowflakes, but everybody's problem is really, around the same thing whenever you niche down and you actually, you know what their problems are going to be so you can solve them. And so laser coaching allows you to coach one person, but coach everyone at the same time. And so that's the access piece. The other one that's really important in a high ticket offer is accountability. So
Yeah.
accountability is so important because left to our own devices, we're not going to show up and do the work. And
Yep.
or we're going to get stuck and we're going to get discouraged. And so having someone to hold us accountable and remind us that this is part of the process, that failing a little, like whenever you're, swinging for the fences is normal. And so having some accountability check-in or like pod groups with people, like I always say, nobody wants to be, especially if you're an overachiever or high achiever, you never want to be the person that didn't do their homework. So it really, like, having some type of accountability group is something very important in an offer. And then the last one is community, some way for them to stay connected. And so that could be like a Facebook group, or just mastermind retreats, things like that.
Okay. And then what, so this would be, yeah, so 10K or and above. And then what would be the cost of the ticket for this
For the
virtual
event.
event? Yeah.
Yeah. So we found that $97 is the sweet spot for a general admission because it's enough skin in the game. But you can do 47 like as an early bird, but your show up rate may be a little lower because 47 to some people is not a lot. But
Mhm.
97 we found, especially for a newer audience, is a really good price point. And then for VIP, anywhere from 197 to 497, having those different, and I definitely recommend having a VIP program when you're going to have an event because those people are invested in you and they already spent more. And so they actually convert better because they're your best buyers.
Now, what does that look like as far as the VIP ticket? What do they get?
Yeah. So VIP ticket, what I love to do is have two Q&A sessions. And so you can do it over the lunch break. So you'll have a lunch break on day one and day two. And there's a reason why you don't have it on day three because it's part of a strategy that you want to get people into your offer and have a welcome lunch on day three. So that's for new buyers. We can go there in a few minutes, but VIP lunch on day one and day two. And then where they just ask questions, they show up and they ask questions. You literally are like, hey, like take 15 minutes, go grab a snack, and then be right back because we're going to have an Ask Me Anything session that's special for just the VIPs. And then the other thing that we love giving VIPs is recordings of the actual event. So we always say that you don't get the recordings until 30 to 60 days after the event because we don't want people to be like, oh, I'm just going to miss the event and not come
Ooh,
at all and get the
ooh.
recordings. So it's important. It's super important for show up rate that it's 30 to 60 days after. And you can deliver it sooner, but in your marketing message, it's 30 to 60 days.
That's an excellent point to make there. I didn't even think about that. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's go back to the days, the number of days. So it's still a 3-day event. That's still the recommendation, even though it's virtual.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So go ahead.
And the
Sorry.
time, I'm just trying to imagine because when you're on Zoom, it's a little bit different than if you're going somewhere, right, in person. So
Mm-hmm.
how long are the days shorter? I guess would be the
No, it's full immersion. It's like
okay.
it's part of the process is getting them to really be immersed because like what we're trying to overcome is really their beliefs in themselves and their belief in you. And so there's a certain amount of sessions that you want to have to actually showcase your process and really get them to that result. And so we start at usually 11 a.m. Eastern because that allows 8 a.m. for Pacific time to start. And then on the first day, we roughly go like to like 7. You can, I think it's, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't have my formula in front of me, but I think it's 4 to 5 sessions on day 1. And then
Mm,
day 2 is a later night because you make the offer halfway through the program and you come back for an evening session because and have what we call laser coaching, which is just to showcase the brilliance and it just reinforces the offer. And then day 3 is your shorter day because it's the last day. And so you can have 3 or 4 sessions during that last day. And it usually ends around 4 to 6 Eastern.
okay, so they're still getting a lot
Yes.
if there's not many sessions and all of that. Okay, wow, this is good. So and $97 and then it's either you said 197 to 497 for the VIP.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I mean it almost sounds like too good to be true, right? Like you just get all these people and then that still convert. So what is the conversion rate with virtual versus in person? Let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
So in person is usually like around, it always depends on how many people you have at your event, but I would say 20%. 20% is a really good conversion, that 20 to 30. And in virtual, you see anywhere from like that 18. It's like 18 is a really good conversion. And then an average conversion is like that 15. So I'd say 15 to 18. But here's
Okay.
the kicker. You get more people in a virtual event because you don't have all of like you don't have the restrictions of a city. You don't like people internationally. You can actually reach globally. Like think about Tony Robbins. He has people all over like Australia, the UK. And like whenever it was in person, people couldn't afford to just fly down to the United States. And so it's more accessible. And so if you are someone that you want to actually have global impact, a virtual event, like you need to add that to your marketing strategy because the fastest way to reach global impact is through a virtual event.
So how do you prepare the attendee to be fully present and to kind of like know what to expect, I guess,
Yeah.
each day? Because 3 days, that's a lot, and you need to plan accordingly, especially for all these different times and different things, and even meals and that sort of thing. So how do you prepare them?
Yeah, so that's what's great about the Facebook group. And the other thing I didn't mention is I always recommend an MC. And so because you don't want to be the person that's playing the MC role as well, you really need someone there for energy management because
Mhm.
you're online for 3 days. And so there's a whole nother thing I forgot to mention, which is gamification. So I'm
Yeah.
going to go back to that too.
Ooh,
But yeah,
okay.
yeah. Um, so with the Facebook group and you have an MC, you can start to prime them before and go live. And you do want to let them know the schedule. And so whenever you're doing the confirmation emails, so there's a whole series of confirmation emails that you want to send out after they purchase their ticket. And you include the schedule and some tips on how to show up. and letting them know it's a virtual event. So the one thing is email copy, making sure you have really clear email copy. The other thing is the Facebook group, going into the Facebook group and actually saying, hey, before the event starts, here are some tips to prepare. You want to make sure you have, you have DoorDash planned for your kids, or you have meals prep, you have water on standby, you have all these things, and actually going live in the Facebook group. And then the MC plays a critical role, especially in that very first session, because the very first session is the session that they decide, is this worth my time? And so you have to have amazing content in that session, and you have to have a really strong MC that sets up exactly how this event's going to work. And so the MC really covers what you're going to get out of the event, how to make the most out of the event, how to use the chat feature in Zoom, because Zoom, like chat, is so important to create community. And then you also want to have them talk about gamification, because you want to give them a reason to stay until the end. And so there's a leaderboard in the software that I mentioned to you. And there's dashboard exercises that we always do. Like there's fun little things that get them points, but they have to be there. They have to be present, and they have to play full out to actually like get points. And so the gamification piece is so important, because if they stay to the end, and they are usually, like, we have a grand prize. And so I've seen people give away like laptops and things like that. And also I've seen people give away just time of like laser coaching session for the top 3. And then the top 100 get to actually watch the laser coaching session. And then the top 250 or gets to ask a question. And then the top 250 gets to just watch the stream. And so having like different prizes to get them to stay to the end and get them to actually play full out on the dashboard. And it's just a fun way to stay engaged. And then that MC actually does games and things like that. Like we play like virtual scavenger hunts, like who has the craziest, funnest pet? And there's like dance parties and things like that, because you got to keep them moving. That's why, yeah, so important in a virtual event. It's more important in a virtual event than it is in an in-person event, because an in-person event, well, you do fight the risk of, I'm going to just go to the bar in an in-person event, or I'm going to go shopping, especially if there's things around. But in a virtual event, all they have to do is close their computer. So you have to make sure you have a strategy there. And that's why it's so important to have an MC. And it's really important. Like, a lot of people don't realize how important it is an MC plays in an enrollment event. It actually will just like increase your conversions if you have a strong MC.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about strong MCs for virtual events. So are these easy to find, and how would someone find a strong MC for a virtual event? And then is it possible for, like, I just think about our team, we have a good sized team, and with our events, like, we do everything. So is that a role that you could kind of train? And are there resources, out there for that to support people?
Yeah. So I don't know of a good resource to find an MC, but I can give you a few that I recommend on here. But the biggest thing with the MC, they have to be someone like, yes, to the team. I've worked with people where I have prepped the MC and it's a team member and they're amazing. But you want to make sure that team member is someone that is comfortable being on camera. They're comfortable, like they have that ability to improv, because it's how do you actually, like, if something goes wrong, or not that something will go wrong, but let's say like a speaker gets delayed, or the host for some reason has to run to the restroom and then you're stuck on stage for a minute. You really need someone that is strong and comfortable on camera, and comfortable, like, just excuse my language, but shooting the shit sometimes. And
Right.
really being able to do that and not get like stuck in their head whenever they're like, oh, what do I do now? Like, I'm done with my notes. And that's another thing that's so, so important, is scripting every single word that the MC is going to say. And then
Really?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's so important.
Tell me why every single word would need to be scripted. I mean, obviously we know it's important what they say, but I also find that some of the best moments seem to be just improv. So
Yeah.
explain the reasoning behind that and the importance of it being scripted.
Yeah, so there's key things during transitions that you want to hit. And so when I say every word is scripted, every keyword is scripted, everything that you want them, every theme that you want them to hit, because what's really important whenever you transition from speaker to speaker is you're recapping and you're setting up the next speaker. Because a lot of people, like, they don't connect the dots. So, for example, with like Russell Brunson's event, that we just, I think it was like last September. And Devon Brown is the most amazing MC. I don't
He
know
was,
if you're, yeah, he's
yeah.
amazing, and he's so great at energy management. And that stuff you can't script. Like, that's something that he has that no one else has. Like, that is like, he's just genius at that. But
Mm-hmm.
what you do want to script is how are you introducing the speaker? Because a bio is important because they're deciding, do they want to listen or do they want to check out for the speaker? And so how do you set up and edify that speaker and what they're talking about is so important. And then the second piece that is important is how do you close the loop on that speaker? Because as an attendee, when you're listening to a presentation, you're not getting every single thing out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an intentional reason why you put a speaker on stage. And if you are not like being intentional about your speakers, then like we need to have a whole nother conversation about that, because that is what drives conversions, is what you're putting on your stage. It's so important. So you have to be able to close the loop and really be able to summarize what you wanted them to take away from that, and then set up that next speaker. And so those are the key moments that you want to like just not left to chance. It's not just like, hey, Bobby Brown is on stage and let's welcome him to the stage. It's no, like there's actually a story and a theme and a through line that you want to make sure that the audience takes out. And so those are the things that I mean that you want to script.
Okay, so with that being said, when you're edifying the next speaker and you said, telling the story, and we know like we're trying to shift their belief, what would be the framework for a good bio for a speaker? Like, what would they need to make sure that they have in that bio to do that effectively?
Yeah, so there should be a little bit of like edifying you, but it should not be about them. Like it really should be about what they are going to learn from you,
Okay.
because people don't care so much about your stats and what you're doing. They care about the value that you're bringing. And so when you are scripting a bio, like change everything. Like if you're talking about yourself too much, you're doing it wrong. Like you really want to make sure that the takeaway is this is what you're going to learn and this is how your life is going to be changed if you listen to me for these 20 minutes.
So I think this is the confusion for a lot of people, because when we talk about sharing our story and helping the viewer or the potential new client or student or whatever, when we're trying to tell your story to get them to relate and then believe it's possible for them. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you do that? How do you tell your story but not make it all about you so that they can see that it's possible? I don't know if that question makes
So
sense.
yeah, so that goes to the hero's journey piece. So I do a lot of inspiration panels, and it is that it's like, how do you make sure this person doesn't check out? And so it is hard, and it is like there is a framework, and so I call it the hero's journey. I learned it when I was working for that company that I worked for a really long time, and it's really where were you before, because you want them to recognize like the other thing that's super important before I go into this is as a host, when you're the main person on stage, it's very easy. Like why like ordinary people or, like not just superstars should be on your stage, that you want to actually use real success stories is because
Mm-hmm.
in our like psychological mind, we will easily say, well, of course that person can do it. Of course Kate can do it. Of course Kristen can do it. Like, but I can't do that. Like that's just not me. Like things like that don't happen to me. And that's why you have to put, because you have a celebrity status. Like when you are on stage, there's that bit of celebrity status, and people just automatically don't realize that you had to go through the grind to get to where you are. And so they completely forget about that. And so that's why I think it's so important to have student success stories. And that goes to the hero's journey piece, because you want them to see that just an ordinary person is doing extraordinary things. They took action and now they're getting the results. They were literally in your seat a year ago, and now look what they have done because they took action. This is what happens on the other side of uncomfortable action. And it's the hero's journey is where were you whenever you first started? And then what action did you take? Because you don't want them to think that it's just a magic wand. So in your story, whenever you're crafting a story, you have to hit the action. because at the end of the day, you want to make sure they realize that it's not a magic wand, that it didn't just happen overnight, that there was something that you did differently that made you get the result. And so that's a key thing in the framework. And then the other thing, so I just did where we were. Sorry, I forgot where I was. Where you were, the action that you took, what your life looks like now, and like what was on
Okay.
the other side of that decision, and what does it look like? And it's just really important that you do like think about your story from the perspective of where are they? And so when you're crafting your bio, think like find out, ask those questions like from the speaker, where are they? What are their biggest pain points? Where are they struggling? Like don't just assume you know, actually ask those questions and get those data points so that you can craft your story to be a little different. Because what you may find out is they're single, like they are single moms and they, want to leave their 9 to 5 job and actually create financial freedom. And so their pain points are, something like they don't have enough time because they're a single mom and they have to like they don't have childcare and all of those things. And so how do you pull and get people that can speak to that? Because you really want to, in your stories, talk about the different objections, which is time, money, shame, self-doubt, and spouse are the 5 main objections that we found. This is
Say those
something I learned from. Oh,
one
sorry, I
more
spit
time.
them out so fast. Yeah, the 5 objections that we find that most audience go through, they fall under buckets: time, money, shame, self-doubt, and spouse
Wow.
are the
Yeah.
5. Yeah, and so
Okay.
your stories should hit those, especially whenever I teach an inspiration panel and your inspiration panel is right before the offer. I feel like I'm just like throwing so much information at you right now.
Good. So good. The information or the inspiration panel, that is where you see people that have been through the program and it worked for them. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, and so
Uh,
you want to align it with those objections because the idea is you are overcoming objections. So, we talked about one time before about how the selling does the speaking on the selling the framework does the selling for you. So you don't have to have so you don't have to have a big sales team. And part of
yeah.
that is you overcome objections through your content. And so before you even make your pitch, you're overcoming the objections in their stories.
Yeah. I mean, that is certainly how I felt when I was at Funnel Hacking Live with all of the stories and all the speakers that were
Yeah.
on stage. Um, okay. So the hero's journey. So I want to I want to take your knowledge and apply this to what I do and how I
Mhm.
coach people to show up online, mainly with short form content. So, using this same type of framework, what kind of advice would you give a creator that is creating maybe a 60-second video or 60 seconds or less video
Mhm.
to apply this same type of system
Yeah.
to speaking to that viewer and touching them like emotionally, but also establishing themselves as the authority.
Yeah. That's a good question. I've never really thought about it because I don't focus on short form. But if I had to say, like, from my experience, what I would start with is the pain. I would start with the connecting through, like, what you think their pain point is, and then go into your story. Because how are you going to stop the scroll is you're not going to talk about yourself. People are tired, like, they don't want to hear about you. They're going to keep
Mhm.
scrolling. Like, you need to give them a reason to connect quickly and then go into your story. And so that's what I would recommend. But I mean, you're the expert, so maybe that's wrong. But that's kind of like if I would take the hero's journey, I would start with their objection first and then turn it into the story.
Yeah, no, I think that that's good advice. And I think that you're right. They have to immediately hear why to keep watching. And
Hmm.
yeah, if if they relate to the problem, then they're going to probably keep listening. But then I do think that it's important just emotionally for them to kind of see the possibilities. And I think the way that they see that is either through you telling your experience, like your story, or you sharing about one of your clients or someone else
Yeah,
and where they started to where they are now. So
yeah, 100%.
Could you apply some of these same things to just your like your group coaching calls? Like as you're talking about like the gamification and the breakout groups and the Facebook group and all these different engagement moments, do you see that people also apply that same type of strategy to just like their weekly coaching sessions that are group style, or no?
Yeah, no. So when I was working for Sage Event Management, they have, because I don't have my own group coaching program yet, but that we had a group coaching program at Sage, and part of it was like you would have implementation days and you learn the content, but then you go into breakout rooms and you share because there is like the power of group coaching is that you're not the only coach. Like there are people who are getting results and you're learning from other people. And so actually putting them into breakouts and not putting all the pressure on you. And it allows them to learn from other people. It allows them to see that they're not alone, that like that whole mindset of like, oh, Sally can do it, then I can do it type of thing. And then also doing like different shares and Q&As. And there was this lady, have you heard of Marisa Murgatroyd? I think is how you say her last name.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, she teaches like online business and she is all about the gamification because it keeps them engaged like in their program and people love to win prizes and they love rewards. And so 100% all of these strategies that you're using for engagement for virtual events can help you in your actual coaching programs because I mean the biggest thing that you're up against with coaching programs, especially after selling it in a 3-day event, and we can talk about the strategy like what I call stick strategy, but you have to keep them engaged.
Yeah.
And so having these different types of things that keep it different and keep it interesting is so important. And so I think, yeah, 100% you can apply gamification so that they are like milestones almost. It's like when you reach this milestone, you get this point and then you get these rewards and it helps you keep them engaged, keep them like staying accountable and keep them doing the work. Um, so yeah, I really do think so.
So what did you call that? You said a stick strategy. Is that what you said, or what was?
Stick strategy. Yes. So this is so important. And so the thing is with a 3-day event, you have to, and like when you're doing mass sales, and I'm sure you saw this with your people, you're going to have refunds. And you have to make sure you have a stick strategy to keep them engaged during that period of time that they are having buyer's remorse because they leave the event and they start to think, did I make the right
Yep.
decision? And if you are not sliding into their emails and you are not like having calls right away, you are risking them dropping away. Like, so it's so important that as soon as they actually buy, there is a process. That's why I always have a welcome celebration at my like at the events because it's a part of stick strategy and it's a call to action for people to make a decision. But like so the welcome celebration is the third day during the lunch of a 3-day event and it plays two roles. It plays the role of a call to action to make a decision because nobody wants to miss the party. They want to get in with their friends, meet the crowd, meet you, go through the onboarding piece. And it's really a celebration. There's like not that much content in it. It's really just, hey, like get them excited, get them to really another thing is getting them enrolled and believing that they can do it. Like, cause you have to remind them, hey, like you just made a big investment, but you made the right choice.
Mm.
And so that's so important to like get in their ear before they go because as soon as they get home, they're back into like where the event bubble burst.
Yep.
And that's where stick strategy comes in because they're around, like they may have a spouse that's not supportive
Yeah.
or doesn't understand the crazy things that you do as an entrepreneur. And their friends, like they're probably at the event because they don't have like girlfriends or friends that can really talk to them and really understand what they're going through. And so they're like, oh, Sally's crazy over here. She's doing this whole thing on the internet. So you have to be the person that's in their ear constantly. And so that's why stick strategy is really key because they leave the event and they leave like the event bubble burst and they're back in their everyday life and they're back in the everyday noise of people telling them that they're crazy and they can't do it. This is not normal because internet business is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not.
Yeah.
And so like having like an onboarding call, like, I mean, as soon as the event ends, like that week, it's so, so important. And it's so important that in your coaching programs, you are addressing mindset. Like mindset is so important because I think it's the biggest block that people miss in their coaching programs. And the reason why people fail is because they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe in themselves enough. to actually do the work.
That
And they're terrified of failing.
that is
And they won't try. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm like, it fires me up when you say that, because that's what keeps people from making a video. Like, is that
Mm-hmm.
reason, right? So I
Yeah.
completely
And
agree.
it keeps them not like it keeps them stuck in inaction because they're terrified of
Mhm.
failure. Because they would rather not fail and start to think, I'm not good enough and I can't do this.
Yeah.
And where when they fail, they think that they like that is just the way I think it comes. Like, don't get me started on how I think our school system needs a whole makeover, but I think it taught us that if you fail, you fail,
Mhm.
and it's not that. Like, if you fail, you still learn. And people are so terrified of failing and moving forward, and people get stuck in inaction because they think that if they fail, they're not good enough and they're not worthy.
Yeah, it's
And so mindset's key.
they think that, or they don't want to look stupid. That's another thing that,
Hmm.
well, or I don't want this judgment from this person or that person. So they just don't take any action. And what I always am coaching my students on is like, I don't even care what action you take. Sometimes just take a small one, because even just doing one small thing is hard for them. So I'll give them like short deadlines to go execute on. It could be a very small thing, but just go do this, so that way you don't have time to overthink it, overanalyze it, second guess yourself. And then you're going to see that because I required you to do it so quickly and you get it done, that it wasn't that bad after all. And you just create these stories in your mind where it's this big scary thing and it really isn't. And so the more you can do that every single day, do these small have these small wins where you're just executing, then you build up the confidence to keep showing up. But
Yeah.
it's crazy how many people, and for years, they'll have an idea, a dream, they'll talk about it, they'll even complain about it. They'll complain, oh, I'm not where I want to be, and this person is, and they just keep telling themselves the same story, and they keep having the same result. It's like, you got to do something different. Isn't that pretty obvious?
Hmm.
But because of that
Hmm.
conditioning of them not being good enough, or somebody that said something to them one time, and and there they are, here we are. So
Yeah. And yeah, and that reminds me, like, that's why events are so, like, why they convert the way that they do is because you have the time. Like, why 3 days is because you actually have the time to change that mindset
mhm.
and, like, change that rewiring and change that belief because people are coming with so many beliefs. And I can't remember, I think it's Myron Golden says you can't put another belief on an actual, like, on another set of beliefs. And so part of what an event does is you have to get rid
Yes.
of those beliefs before you build new beliefs. And I just love that saying.
Oh, I like that.
So true. That's why 3 days. Like,
Yeah, that is so good. That is so good. So okay, going back to, let's go back to the buyer's remorse discussion and the stick strategy.
oh yeah,
So okay, so that you do your pitch, they purchase. Then the welcome party, what does that look like exactly if it's virtual?
yeah. So if it's virtual, so the host or MC goes on first and just loves them up a little bit, and then the host will actually go on and really talk about like how excited they are for the year ahead, what to expect, and then you have usually a team member pop on real quick and just go over this is what your next 30, 60 days is going to look like because those are the questions they have, like when do I get access to the Facebook group? When do I get access to the portal? When are the calls? And so you don't tell them everything, but you tell them like the next like 30 days, like you're going to get an email from this, you're going to get access to the Facebook group, or you already have access to the Facebook group, and your very first call is on X date. And so a little bit of logistics. And then we like to send them into breakouts where it's like, what are you most excited about changing for this year? Like,
That
because it's like gets them to future cast on what my year is going to look like. Like, so that's why it's so important. And we usually do something around the fact of what are you most excited about, or how do you want your life to look differently a year from now? And that is a piece of stick strategy because they get enrolled in that vision of that future cast and their future self. Then you send them in breakouts and they actually get to network and meet each other and share. And then come out is whenever we do mindset. And the mindset is really about you have to be more enrolled in yourself than other, like before you go back home, because people are going to tell you, like we talked about, people are going to tell you you can't do it. People are going to tell you you're crazy, but you have to be more like you have to have conviction in your decision before you go back, because and plug into this community when you don't feel like you have the certainty. Borrow our certainty type of conversation. That's really about like, hey, you're about to go back and people aren't going to understand what you're doing, but you have to stay more enrolled in you and enrolled in your future decision and your future self than anybody else, because people are going to tear you down and things are going to happen and failure is going to happen, but you have to be more convinced that you can do it and really convicted.
Yeah, that's really
So that's that. Like,
certainty.
yeah. So that's that little piece.
Everything, I feel like. I think it might be like a little delayed from when I talk and when you. Can you share with us the future casting portion? What questions do you ask them to get them to future cast?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is a whole part of the actual 3 day event. It's what I call the gap
Mm-hmm.
analysis. And so the very first part of the day and really the process is getting them to really identify where they are. It's so important to realize where you are on the continuum and where do you want to go. And so showing them what is possible. And so they can actually see this is the life that I want to have, and have them do exercises. For example, I have a client where he does more like energy healing, but he does a future pacing exercise where he does a meditation where they visualize and actually visualize what their life is going to look like. And so things like that, that's just like, where do you want your life to be a year from now or 6 months from now? And really, it depends on the duration of your coaching program, because then you can tie it back. Like if your coaching program is 6 months, where do you want your life to be in 6 months? Because you're selling a 6 month coaching program, and you can easily tie back to remember where like what you said, where you said you wanted to be 6 months from now. Well, how are you going to get there? What decision and action are you going to take to actually get there? What are you going to do differently to not let these 3 days be wasted? And that happens like more in an enrollment conversation. But that's kind of like the like thought process of it.
What?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and it made me think as far as because I am constantly thinking about the duration of coaching programs and what uh, can support people the most, and like it, should they be a year? Like sometimes I think a year is too much of a commitment for a lot of people. And so I almost, and maybe this is the wrong way of thinking, but I'm like, maybe it needs to be 90 days so that they get enrolled in the belief, they start implementing, and then when they see that it can work for them in that 90 days, then they can do another 90 days or whatever, go to the next thing. Like, but I don't know, what is your recommendation of that?
Mm. So there's two sides to it. I think one is what do you like whenever you have a result, how long does it take to get that result?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like if it's 6 months or if it's a year, then do that. What I found is a lot of people need that ramp up time. And so like 6 months is okay, but finding like a year, because it takes them a few months to get their footing.
Sure.
And it really depends on what you're teaching. But the other thing, gosh, I wish I would have wrote down my thought. What was the last piece that you asked me? Because you gave me a thought and now I lost it.
Like, well, because I was it about the 12 months? Because sometimes I wonder about if,
Oh, 90 days.
or yeah, 90 days.
The
Yeah.
Yeah. So my only thing about why 90 days, I would ask you, is now you have to renew them so often. Like you're constant, like what is your renewal process? Because it's like, because then you have to sell them into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Mm.
Where if you have a year-long program, you can charge more, because you can charge more for a year, then you can charge for 90 days, and you get them in and you create an actual cycle and a process that gets them to the result. And there's different phases of your months that work together and build up to get them there. Where if you do like 90-day sprints, my only concern and like objection that I would have in question is just really, well, now you have to work hard to get them into another 90 days.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay. Yeah, I see that. Um, okay, that's good. So that the stick, what the stick strategy is important, future casting, even with the stick strategy, that was a question I didn't ask. So you do the welcome party. You went over that. Then how soon, like, does that first call need to really happen? I mean, can it
the week.
48 hours, like too long?
No, 48 hours is perfect. Like if an event ends on like Monday, or sorry, on Sunday, then having like Thursday is the call. Like you want to have like something like that where they're excited and they know the call is coming. But the reason why I say Thursday is there's a whole post email follow up that you want to do that is like whenever we were doing in person wasn't a thing because you didn't have the power of online where you have automation, right? And so we can get into that if you want in a second. But there's a whole series of email and strategy that you do for post event email follow up. And so you want to have time to do that. And then that is a call to action to get people into the Thursday like kickoff call, onboarding call. And then a lot of people, like I'm working with a client now, and their program doesn't happen for a month. Like we're having an event, and their program doesn't start until the like a month from the actual event. And I was like, hold up, wait a minute, you're going to lose people.
Yeah.
So we are actually creating like a ignite phase where it's like a ramp up that's kind of like a pre phase before the actual program starts.
Okay.
And so you have to have some type of thing to like keep the momentum going. They just spent 3 days with you. They are in momentum. Like you want to keep that going.
How do you handle refunds if or like what's your recommendation for that or setting the expectation around what that looks like?
Hmm. Yeah, so refunds pop up a lot in what I call the sales lobby. There's a whole virtual booth for when you have a virtual event. And my question whenever someone asks for a refund is let's actually talk about how committed you are because you're already asking how you can get out before you even get in.
Mm.
Like that is a commitment over convenience conversation. Is how committed are you to that future self? Because if you are asking how you can get out, then you're not committed. And so that is like a conversation piece. And then, I mean, if somebody wants to refund, like you have to honor like a refund, but we say that it's a non-refundable deposit. But I think legally you have to give, like, there's a certain amount of days. But we don't say there's a refund policy. We say it's non-refundable.
Okay. So you set the expectation,
Yeah.
it's non-refundable. And then when having the conversation, it's how committed are you? Because that is,
Yeah.
I mean, that happens a lot, right? They're committed and then
Yeah.
they get in their head and, whatever
Yeah.
themselves out of it. So do you find that by having that commitment conversation, you're able to save a lot of them?
Yeah. So I don't do a lot of like on the back end piece. I'm more at the actual event. But during the event, really leaning into the commitment over convenience really does help save the sale. And so, because no one wants to be called out for, oh, I'm not committed. Like, no one, because the thing is, like, there's a question behind the question. Whenever they have an objection, they're going to say they don't have the time, they don't have the money. But what really is lying beneath is tell me more about what's going on, because there's actual objection over an objection. They can easily say, I don't have the time or I don't have the money. They're not going to say, I'm scared that I can't do this or I did a program and I didn't show up and I didn't do the work. They're not going to say that. You have to actually get to where they are on the continuum of can I do this, can I not do this, and every objection is figuring out where are they, or if they're saying they don't have the money, is it will they not have a roof over their head type of like they don't have the money, or is it I may have to move something around, it's a little uncomfortable for me to spend this type of objection. And so figuring out where they are, and that's why the refund conversation is commitment over convenience conversation. And it's really where are they on that continuum and what objection is really driving their question.
What a great hook that is for a short form video.
I didn't come up with that. I didn't come up with that. That's from my old boss. I mean, she's brilliant. So
That's so good. So like, tell me, what would you say to people just, about commitment over convenience? Like give us like a 60-second, clip on that.
yeah. So do you want to kind of role play? I've never done this before. So,
I don't know.
But yeah.
This is what comes to me is like,
Yeah.
talk about
So I would just find out. So yeah. So tell me a little more. Why are you asking if you can get out before you're even in? Just tell me a little more about that. It's kind of what I would find out.
Yeah. And then, so one thing that I would hear would be, well, I've just been investing in so many of these programs and I haven't been able to get started with them all. Like I want to finish the other ones before I start this one.
Yeah. So just tell me more about that program. Like whenever you decided to do it, how invested like were you in that program? Like how invested are you?
Well, I mean, I'm always invested. I go to so many events, I buy all the courses, I learn all the things.
And where are you stuck now? What's holding you back from getting to where you want to go?
I just keep learning and I'm not very good at
Mm,
taking action.
So what is it that's keeping you from taking action?
I really don't know. This is, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, the
Well, that is why
yeah.
And that is why you need this coaching program because we're actually going to hold your hand, roll up the sleeves, and make sure you take action. So if you're someone and you're stuck in inaction, the reason why you need this is because we're going to put you in action. So make your reason not to your reason to and get in this program because the fastest way to get the result, the fastest way to take action is being in this program. And I'm going to make sure you actually start taking action now, right away.
Okay.
So I would do something like that.
This. Well, yeah, I've heard that from all the coaches that I've hired, but that they don't
Hmm.
they don't make sure, they don't hold my hand, and they don't hold me accountable.
You spent 3 days with me. So do you think that I would show up for you after being with me for these 3 days?
That's a good question. You've spent 3 days with me. Do you think I would choose? Okay, I like that. So, but that is,
Yeah.
but to be fair, this is why it's critical that like logistically things are set up and that you do have a strategy and that you do have the support on the back end to show up
Hmm.
because that is the reality of it. Is there's so many coaching programs out there, as you know, and and some are better than others in that regard because there's so many moving parts and they're all important. Like you could be the best coach,
Yeah.
but if you don't have your system set up on the back end, then yeah, people are going to slip through the cracks. And yes, it ultimately they have to take action. You can't do it for them, but there are ways that you can support people and give them the best chance for success. I feel like.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, and the thing that's sad about this industry is there are a lot of coaches that don't have the backup set up. Like they have full intention, the back end, the full intention to over deliver and deliver, but they don't actually have the system and the strategy in place. And people fall through the cracks and people have shame around what happened. And they're terrified that's going to happen again. And that is an objection that shows up. And it is the objection that is literally layered beneath. It's literally like an onion that like they're not going to tell you that they feel shame because they didn't show up
Mhm.
or that they have a fear because somebody else didn't show up. And it's like our job in these conversations to guide them to like to ask the questions and really guide them into the decisions that best for them. Like sometimes the decision like is not yes, join my program. Sometimes the decision is no, maybe this isn't right fit for you.
Right.
And if you're and like I'm not like an expert on like I would say sales conversations, but I've been in a lot of lobbies, and it really is our job to not twist somebody's arm. Like, I don't believe in that. Like, I believe that what we're doing is serving someone. It's not about selling them. And that's why it's so important to ask these questions, and you have to find out where they are on that continuum. Because if you don't know, then you're just going to say that the prescription is your offer, and maybe your prescription offer is not what's right for them. And so it is it is, I don't know. I always say it's a disservice to not make an offer, but it's also a disservice to throw an offer on someone just because you're trying to make a sale. It really is this best for them?
Yeah, I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. I don't think that every person is uh is right for your program. And I don't think that you're right for your
No.
person because we're all different. And so yeah, I think it's really important to it's the connection. It all comes back to like, are you connecting with these people? Do they understand what you're about? And do you understand what their needs are? And like, I mean, it really is in the details. That's why people need someone like you because everyone can have the best of intentions, but there's so many different pieces, so many different pieces. I mean, you mentioned the emails after, right? The onboarding, the welcome parties, the gamification. Like that's a lot of different things. Then Zoom and all of the I
Hmm.
mean, there's just so much. So as far as like the if you have an online course, what platform have you seen that you like the best with that? Like, is it school? Is it Kajabi? Like, what do you see on that end?
Yeah, so I haven't seen a lot of that. I know a lot of people use Kajabi. So I'm really not like a course expert or more a high ticket offers. But I think the biggest one that I'm aware of is Kajabi, but I'm not an expert in it.
So you, yeah, because you're just on the front end of it with the sales.
I'm on the front end,
But
exactly.
I love that discussion of like which one is the best on the back end, because I do find that I like Kajabi too. Uh, but then some people are like all about school. So, and we use school, but I don't like it as much. But
Yeah, I think it's whatever's intuitive, like intuitive for you and intuitive for them.
well, because when you say you could like gamify the coaching too, I love that idea. And school does have that to some degree, but it would be cool if there, and I think Kajabi does this, but really tracking like what kind of coaching calls they attend and different things, so it's just easier. But anyway, I don't want to get us too off track of our discussion. So okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff with virtual events. Let's bring it home by talking about the short form content and, in your opinion, kind of what that should look like to attract people to attend the event. What do you?
That is such a good, yeah. So the very first step, so this is funny because so many people get this wrong. They like, and even like the experts that I've worked with when I was working at Sage, they do not start with the very first step, and it's figuring out your offer first. And because you want to reverse engineer your offer into your content and then your content into your marketing. And so it's so important because it's an ascension path. It literally is the free thing, the taster to the next thing. And so it's critical whenever you're like designing your content like strategy and what you're going to talk about and how you're going to go live, that it's a taster of what your offer is. Because if they fall in love with your marketing, they go to your event. If they fall in love with your event, they go into your high ticket offer. And then the thing that we were talking about with like it's so important that when you're in these enrollment conversations that you're speaking to the person that's right fit for your program. If you do this marketing strategy the right way, like if you actually reverse engineer, then you should be attracting the person that's right fit. That may not mean that they might not have the money or they may not have the time, and like there's those objections, but you should ideally be attracting the buyers that are going to be warmed up. They love what you have to offer. They have a relationship with you. They understand what you're doing because you've literally been giving them little by little a taste. And then now you're just showing them, here's the buffet. Like, here's all of it. And here's how you can work with me. And so that's like the very first step that I would say to someone when creating short form content. And really for anything that you're doing in your business is, where do you want to go? Like, what do you want that business to look like? What do you want your offer suite to look like? So that way you're reverse engineering that into into everything you're doing. And it's literally like in your ascension path, it's little by little, the way you like, whenever you work your way up the ladder,
Yeah,
or the value ladder, whatever you want to call it, it's like the same person at just at different levels. They get different access. Like maybe they're not ready for, like they're in the free bucket right now, but it's the same result.
yeah.
And then the next thing is the course. And that person works their way up to the course. And then there's the high ticket offer. But it's still the same framework, the same result. And it's just the more you go up the ladder, the more access you're getting.
One thing that I face a lot with our students is how to incorporate, and I'm smiling because we've kind of already had this conversation, but how to incorporate you as a person, right? Your personality and what makes you with your niche, because that is what makes a strong personal brand. And many people struggle with this because for some reason, the moment we go online and create content, it's like we have to be all business, and they think that they can't share anything about them personally. Why do you think people struggle with that so much?
I think it goes back to the fear of being seen and seen as different and seen as like, just the different fears of how they're showing up and how they're being seen and being vulnerable. I think being vulnerable is so hard in this society. It's not something that is innate to us. And we've been told to kind of shy away from those feelings. And I think the biggest thing and like I struggle with this too. We talked and I started posting a little more on Instagram. But but it really is that, if you continue to not show yourself and really actually be vulnerable, you're going to be just like everyone else. And this internet industry is going to continue to get noisier and noisier. And if you're not showing up and being authentic and having an expression of yourself and having a strong personal brand, you're not going to connect to anyone. And so it's really, I think it's important to figure out how do you show that side of yourself, because people want to be able to connect with you, and the way that we connect is through emotion.
Yeah.
And so showing, like we talked about, like for me, like I thought that I could never be a mother because I wanted to have a business, and how I'm like blown away by how you show up on the internet, and how you show that side of you, and you're a successful entrepreneur. And the same thing with like Macy from the Sales Girls. I'm like, oh, now I'm thinking, oh my God, maybe I can have a kid. But it was something I didn't even realize was a possibility, because I was so hung up on the fact that I can't have kids because I want to be an entrepreneur. And now I'm seeing these women show up and have both. And it's like, oh wait, you can have both. And so that changes people's lives. And that's such an important piece. I mean, just imagine, like, I could be still, like, I don't know if I want to have kids yet, but if I didn't see that online, I would tell myself I can't have kids, and I wouldn't have kids. Like, that is a big deal. Like, you're changing people's lives by showing up and sharing that. And so I think we get selfish and we think about ourselves too much, and we don't think about the other person on the other side of the lens.
Yeah, that's so true. And like that's I do think that that is like the thought we have as women, is that we have to choose one or the other. I mean, I used to feel like that too. Like, well, I can't I can't have it all. I have to make a decision. And that isn't true. I had a coach that said to me, or that taught me to ask myself, is that story true, or is that just like a story you've been told? Like
Mm,
our belief about, well, we can't be mothers and have these successful careers. Like, is that actually true, or is that just what we were told? Like, it's what we were
yeah,
told.
that's what we were told,
So
or what we saw.
yeah.
you know, it's kind of like we didn't see like women with kids having a successful business. So we put in our mind, we made up a belief that, oh, you can't have both. Like someone didn't even tell us that. We just made it up because we drew the conclusion based on how society was in the past.
Right, right. So it's like just seeing these other possibilities is, yeah, it's really powerful. I mean, I've had, Brene Brown, who I'm sure you know, says
Mhm.
that vulnerability is like the path to connection, and I couldn't agree more, because anytime I watch someone online and they share something vulnerable, I do feel like I feel a connection to them if I can relate to their story. And but it requires courage, right, to do that. Because
Mhm.
with I think this is a thing too that I like to really make sure people understand, is like, if you want to be magnetic, with
Mhm.
that comes the fact that you are going to be repellent. Like, you're going to repel people if you are magnetic. Like, there is no way that you can be
Mhm.
magnetic and not repel people. So that was a big lesson for me, is like, okay, if you want to get to like this level of connection, it's impossible to get there and not offend some people or have some people think you're annoying and not like you, because that's just, when you're truly yourself, not everyone is going to like you, and that's okay. But to get to the people that love you, you have to be willing to go through that.
Yeah. And that just reminds me so much, as a woman, we like morph ourselves into somebody because we are people pleasers. Like naturally, like a lot of women struggle with people pleasing, and we put on all these different masks so that we're pleasing everyone else, and we're not actually being ourselves and attracting what is meant for us. And so I just think that is just such an important piece of, finding your voice and finding your authenticity, and just letting go of these beliefs that like we have to be it for everybody. We don't. And it's like, and especially in business, you can't be it for everybody. You can't.
No.
Like a successful entrepreneur has to niche down.
No, it's so true. I mean, and that's what it is. It's removing the mask. And uh,
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing is suffocating and it's exhausting. And I mean, I did it for 35 years. Like, I literally just learned how to remove the mask, find my voice. Just honestly, I would say in the last couple of years. I may have
Yeah.
looked like I knew before, but I didn't, and it is just, there's so much freedom, and just your life just gets better when you are who you are. Yeah, you do have to face some challenges, and you may lose some relationships and different things, uh, but it's worth it, right? Because there's a price for everything. And I would rather pay that price and be free than
Mm-hmm.
trying to please everyone and not living in my calling. That's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
how I feel about it. So this is so good. Okay, you need to get on every podcast there is. I'm like your biggest fan now, because I'm like, this is just, you're just so good at what you do, and I love it. And now I want to go
Thank
host
you.
an event. They're like, we have to do
Thank you so much.
this. So um,
Yeah.
let's.
That means a lot coming from you. Thank you.
Oh well, yeah. No, I think you're fantastic.